Welcome to Ultra Uncovered, the podcast where we explore the untamed world of trail and ultra running. I'm Corinne Shalvoy.
And I'm Russell Ditsworth. Together, we're peeling back the layers of iconic races, challenging terrains, and the incredible stories that fuel the passion for the sport.
Get ready to uncover the raw essence of ultra running with both of us.
Awesome. Welcome to episode number 1.
Episode number 1. Woo!
So, we are going to be talking about a race that's very near and dear to my heart. Corinne, do you want to let them know what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, we're just going to get right to it. The race we're talking about today is the one, the only, the Black Canyon Ultras. We're going to be talking in depth about the course. This is an iconic race. We're going to tell you all about it. And before we get into it, we are both wearing our running shoes because we're runners. We're a little dressed up because we're on a podcast and we want to make it fun. But yeah, what shoes are you wearing, Russ?
So, in honor of Black Canyon, this is a speedsters race.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have got the Icodin version Alpha Fly orange Nike Alpha Fly.
Yep.
I don't know if I would choose to wear these on the Black Canyon course, but it wouldn't be wrong to not to consider it.
You could do it. There have been people that have, I believe, worn super shoes on this course. So it's not totally far-fetched. And the colorway is like very desert. So
Absolutely.
I think that was a good choice. I am wearing the shoe that I race in most often. It is the S-Lab Ultra 3, but this is the limited edition with the cool rainbow bottom. This is the Courtney DeWalter edition, the GOAT Courtney. So I have, I wear this shoe pretty much for every single race that I do. So I love it, but I also especially love the Courtney edition because I love Courtney.
Absolutely. And then beverages. So
very important.
What have you got going today?
Okay, well, I'm not particularly a beer drinker, so I'm drinking a Cayman Jack margarita, watermelon margarita. So we'll see. But you are a beer drinker.
I am a beer drinker. I've got an IPA in my hands. This is the Two Hearted IPA by Bell's.
Nice.
It's an American IPA. So cheers, Corinne.
All right, let's talk about Black Canyon. Oh man, I might spill on myself. It's a little full. Excuse us. All right, here we go. So just to give you an overview of how we're going to do this, if you didn't listen to our intro, our podcast is set up in 2 parts. First part is a deep dive, deep dive into the race itself. All about the logistics, all about the aid stations, all about what to expect on the terrain, the temperatures, all of that. And the second half of the podcast is going to be an interview. Today, we're going to interview each other because we've both run this race, but it's going to be an interview with someone who has run the race so that you can get a firsthand account of what it is like to be on the course. And that might be from somebody who is a middle or back of the packer, might be from somebody who is chasing a podium, maybe even somebody who has won the race in the past. We want to kind of bring all, and in each episode, a different perspective. So we're going to spread it out.
So if you're out there looking for information on Black Canyon, you're going to run the event, you're maybe running it for the first time, or maybe you're running it and you're wanting to know a little bit more about the details about what to expect, more than what you can get on the race website and more than you can get from maybe a perspective of just an elite runner on a podcast talking about how they did in the event. This is the podcast for you. We're going, like Corinne said, we're going to dive deep into the details of what to expect. So hopefully this is something that you can enjoy.
Yep. All right. So Black Canyon Ultras. This is a race that happens every year in early to mid-February, depending on the year. This year, 2024, it's going to happen on February 10th and 11th. Technically, the location starts in Spring Valley, Arizona, and ends in New River, Arizona. All of this is north of the Phoenix area on I-17. If you're just driving straight up the highway toward Flagstaff, you're going to see a lot of the exits that have the names of these aid stations. So off to the side is the beautiful Black Canyon Trail, and you're running point-to-point course north to south.
Yep.
technically, the race starts on a track at Mayer High School. So whereas many races end on a track, this one starts on a track, which is kind of unique. You get to do a lovely 400 to start the race. So that is the location. The race is put on by the not arguably one of the best race organization out there. It's Aravaipa Racing, and they have been doing the event since 2014. So it's been going for a long time. It's grown over the years, and I feel like every single year gotten more and more and more competitive. We're going to talk a little bit about why people race this or what affiliations the race has in a minute. But it's a very large race.
Yep. And the large race is the 100K race. They also offer a 60K race that occurs on the day after. And then new as of the last couple years, they have a category of racers who not only run the 100K on Saturday, but also run the 60K on Sunday. I don't think they have a name for them necessarily, but they're doublers. There's a handful. I looked at Ultra Sign Up. There's less than 20, I think, registered. But some people have finished this that you may know. Corey Woltering has finished this double. And so it's another unique challenge that's brought by. So 2014, so this is maybe the 11th running of the event.
Yep.
And like you said, it's grown in popularity and in importance on the calendar throughout the years.
Right. And there are a couple of key things to note. This is one of the only races that is a Western States 100 qualifying race that is less than 100 miles. There's not too many that are 100K distance. This is 100K. If you run the 100K in under 17 hours, you can enter the Western States Lottery. The cutoff officially for the 100K distance is 20 hours. But in order to get that Western States qualifier, you need to run it in under 17 hours. Fairly generous considering this is not a super climby, vert heavy race. So it's a great one to consider if you're really looking to get an early season Western States qualifier out of the way.
Absolutely. They run 3 waves and they're very generous with the cutoff times. It's an event that Aravaipa wants everyone to finish. So I think that it's a great opportunity for, like Corinne's saying, if you're looking for that check mark every year to be able to get into the Western States lottery, this is one of the events that you can go out and do that's less than 100 miles.
Right. It's also a golden ticket race. So along the Western States, same, thought pattern there. We've got 3. This is the only race in the golden ticket series that offers 3 tickets. All of the rest are the top 2 male and female. So 3 men and 3 women from Black Canyon 100K will get golden tickets to run Western States 100 this year. And those tickets, if somebody declines it or is already in the race, will roll down to 5th place. So another huge draw for the race. One of the reasons that it brings massive competition is that it is a chance to get a golden ticket.
In years past, this might have been an early season golden ticket opportunity. Now it's the second to last golden ticket series race out there. This one and then Canyons later in the year are the last 2 opportunities. And so with Bandera no longer being a golden ticket race, I think a lot of people are taking to the desert for their opportunity to shoot for that ticket.
Yep. And then this year, for the first time, Black Canyon is also on the World Trail Majors circuit. So announced last year, the World Trail Majors, or WTM, is a series of 9 races, currently could expand to more, across the world that are all considered races that really showcase, I think, the locations that they're in. They showcase the community and they showcase the values and the amazing culture that we have in ultra running. And so Black Canyon is unique in that it is the only race in the United States. There is one in Canada, so there's 2 in North America right now. But this year, it's the only one in the U.S. that is a World Trail Majors race.
And for those athletes looking to compete on that series, you've got to complete at least 2 events.
Yes.
I don't know that they've laid out all of the details on what the competition really looks like at the end of the year, or how many points you get for certain things.
Yeah, I believe they recently put out what the prize purse is for that top 5 individuals. So you can run more than 2 of them, but your top 2 places or your top 2 results from any of those 9 races count toward ranking you, and the top 5 are going to be winning some prize money. And the whole goal of World Trail Majors was, hey, you don't need to do all these in one season. You need to experience every one of these races in your lifetime of ultra running. So that's really what their goal was, but it's also definitely turning into an opportunity to also earn some money.
Fantastic.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So the course itself, Russ, do you want to talk a little bit about like elevation, gain, loss, where we're starting? We're not starting at sea level.
We are not starting at sea level. So depending on where you're coming from and where you're training, this is not necessarily a sea level race like I would consider the Phoenix metro area at around 1,000 feet. You're starting almost in Payson, Arizona. So think about like the Arizona landscape. The Phoenix metro area is around 1,000 feet. Flagstaff is at about 7,000 feet. You're not at 7,000 feet, but south of Payson, you start in Mayer High School around 4,000 feet, I think is the elevation at that location. And we mentioned we start around a track. Don't bring out your spikes because this is a dirt track and there has been mud around that track.
That's true.
So
it is a dirt track.
It is
That's right.
It is a dirt track.
Yeah.
It's easy to get out fast. Let's be honest. There was some low 5-minute people starting at the races recently, but you get around for 3/4 of a mile, and then you start going through the town of Mayer, and you eventually hit some dirt roads to get over to the Black Canyon Trail. It is a gentle climb for the first about 4 to 5 miles before you hit the high point of the race. The high point is at I don't have it here. It's just over 4,000 feet.
Yeah, I think it's like 40. Yeah.
So you 4193. So 4,200 feet is where you're hitting out in the high point.
Yep.
From that point all the way until almost mile 28 is a gentle downhill all the way into that area. So you're looking at most of your the net downhill of the course happens in that first 60K to Black Canyon City.
Yeah. Yeah. So just thinking about this a little bit in terms of kind of breaking it down aid station to aid station. Your first aid station you're going to encounter is the Antelope Mesa aid station. It's around between 6 and 7 miles. Yep. Most people will just run straight through that aid station. Not really. It's cool in the morning. We didn't talk about that yet. You're starting usually in the mid 30s. A lot of people are starting in gloves, sleeves, and warm up. You got to have a jacket. You really do need like even a puffy to be warming up and hanging out around the start area. It's going to warm up quickly, but again, you're not maybe drinking as much, although you should drink a lot in those first few miles. So you might not need to refill it at mile 6. Antelope Mesa, it is a smaller aid station, of course, well stocked. All of the aid stations with any Aravaipa race are fully stocked, but this is a little bit smaller area, smaller tent. You cross a road, you come to that aid station, and then you kind of just run right through. So again, those first 6 miles, a little bit of uphill. Some of that's on pavement, some of that's on dirt. And then you get into the single track and you're going to hit Antelope Mesa. And then after you leave Antelope Mesa, you're going to kind of venture onto the Black Canyon Trail, onto more single track, and really start to get into a section of the course that is very important to pay attention to how fast you're running, because it is very flowy, very easy to run very quickly on. It is single track and it's winding, but it's nice wide, turns, and you can really flow.
Buffed out. It's buffed out in this area. I would say the steepest section is actually from that mile 13 aid station all the way to Bumblebee. There's some kind of steeper sections in there. Before that, very flowy and very easy to get moving. If you have some ideas on splits you want to hit, it's easy to get into a sense of following along with the people that you're around and feeling good and moving quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, footing is always important to pay attention to. I think during this whole race, we have had a lot of friends run the race and they have come out with bloody knees or a couple of people that have had their races end because of falls. So we're not talking about like super duper smooth stuff, but there are sections that are smoother and there's sections that are rocky. Overall, if you had to say like, is this a rocky course? Is this a technical course? Like, let's talk a little bit about that because it's all up for interpretation. It's very subjective, but how would you describe it in terms of like, if you looked at the course as a whole, technicality?
So this is not like 1,000 foot in a mile technical rocks scrambling, but it's also not California carpet, right? Like this is not like, completely buffed out. There are rocks you're going to be jumping over. It is winding. In the single track sections, passing isn't going to be very super easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take at least some effort. You might have to go up on the trail a little bit to pass or be passed, things like that. And we're talking about the cactus, right? We're talking about the desert, the things that are out there that are not looking to help you with a soft landing.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to end up looking like Tara Dower.
Try not to pull a Tara Dower.
Going down the trail with teddy bear choya sticking in their shoulder.
Which is a very real possibility. It's not that hard to do if you lean the wrong way. So so just pay attention. I think that's definitely and I was actually, well, I wasn't with Tara when this happened, but I saw her very shortly after. And I can't believe that this happened to her. I hope it wins the
picture of
the year from I think it was Ultra Sign Up doing the funny awards of the year. Anyways, it was an iconic photo. I think it made Howie Stern's like life to take this photo.
Fantastic.
Anyways, you have to check that out. But yes, so let's go on to the next aid station, Hidden Treasure. So we're now
from Antelope Mesa, mile 6.7 down to Hidden Mesa, about the half marathon mark.
Hidden Treasure.
Hidden Treasure?
Correct.
Okay.
Antelope Mesa to Hidden Treasure. Yep, about the half marathon, about 13 miles. And then the next section is what you were talking about, Russ. That's really windy, flowy, easy to go fast on. I do remember that, between Antelope Mesa and Hidden Treasure, there is a little bit of technicality. There's some rockiness. It's not downhill. It's not climbing, but it's not particularly super fast terrain. I mean, you can move quickly over it, but there's definitely some rocks. So
it's not super smooth. And the elevation profile, if we're talking about leading up to Hidden Treasure, looks like it's just basically straight downhill. There are some undulations in there. You're not just screaming downhill the whole way. It's a net downhill, but there are spots where you're coming out of a little bit of a wash and you're coming back up. And around.
For sure. Okay. So Hidden Treasure, we're at 13 miles. And then from there, you're going to make your way to Bumblebee Ranch. Bumblebee is at around mile 19. Bumblebee is an iconic, everything you could imagine that you would ever need or want at an aid station is there. They cook hot food. There's all kinds of stuff. There's ice. I mean, there's ice at every aid station, but this is a major first crew point.
Yep.
And it's an aid station that has historically been run every year by Squirrel's Nut Butter and Chris Thornley. It's Chris, right?
Yes.
Craig's
the director. Chris is the Squirrel's Nuts Butter.
Got it. Chris Thornley. And it's a huge boost to get there. Lots of spectators, lots of cheering. It's a critical point. You're going to start climbing a little bit after that. So when you get to Bumblebee, do whatever you need to do. Oftentimes I would switch out a vest.
Yep.
Kind of just a restock of everything. Make sure that and it's where you might want to start cooling too. I mean, even in the front of the race, I think it's smart to start that early. And at this point, you're maybe
if you're
at
if
10.
you're 20 miles in,
Yeah.
the fastest people are getting there in a little over 2 hours. People are getting there all the way throughout. So 9 a.m. at the very earliest, people are getting through there. It's not too early to take on ice. I mean, it's a massive aid station, like Corinne's saying. There's motorhomes there. There's lots of cars parked there. There's like a little saloon almost set up. You kind of walk through.
The windmills, the iconic windmills.
Yep, the windmills are down there. There's like a grassy area. But the minute you leave there, like you want to be able to have what you need for that next 10-mile section.
Yeah.
There's an aid station between, but you start a climb immediately thereafter. It is not too early to start cooling.
Yeah. So yes. So then you're really going to have, if you're doing the 60K, maybe the steepest climb of the race for the 60Kers coming right out of Bumblebee. You basically just go straight up a road, and then back onto the trail. And then this next section, we've talked about and in our experiences, it looks.
The elevation profile makes it look like it's gentle downhill, cruisy, maybe the same stuff that you were on, after Antelope Mesa early in the race.
Yeah.
That is really not the case.
It's not. It's not. It's how did you describe it? You're kind of running along. It's like
it's a contour. You're along the contour. You're out of the mountain. You're going into a little bit of a drainage, and every time you hit that drainage, it's hopping over 6 or 8 largely spaced rocks, and the footing you need to be very careful about. And you come around, and then you get out and you've got amazing views.
Yeah.
The views in this section are absolutely incredible. I think it's the Bradshaw Mountains that are off to the east, or off to the west. And those are, sometimes they're snow covered. It's beautiful in that area. And you've got line of sight.
Yeah.
Like you may be able to see 3/4 of a mile down the road. So you can take splits on competitors. You can take a look at kind of where you're at in terms of how you're moving. Maybe a little bit too early in the race to really be like racing if you're in the 100K. But if you're in the 60K and you want to know where you're gauging up, I mean, this is a good spot to kind of see kind of how you're doing among other people that are out there.
Yeah, it's just good to have it kind of, I think, in your head that this section is going to look and almost feel like it's flat. But if I'm not moving really quickly, and if my splits are a little slower than I'm anticipating them to be, like, don't get discouraged, because I think it's just a slower section of the course considering the footing. And so just knowing that, I think, something to think about might be, just try to be steady. Try to be steady through this
even
section.
effort through that section. And don't worry about the splits. They may be a minute. They may be a minute and a half off of what you thought you could do by looking at the profile and saying, well, I'm a net downhill from mile 20 to mile 24.
Yeah.
But they may be a little bit slower miles than what you thought. So this leads us into, you do get an aid station at mile 24. That's Gloria Mine. Gloriana Mine.
Mm-hmm.
It is, it's just off a little road. It is not crew accessible. It's very small. Usually it's just a single tent that's in that location, but they have had ice there, and then they'll have just kind of the normal aid station food and drinks there for you. But the critical piece is that from Gloriana Mine down to the next aid station, you've got almost 6.5 miles, I think.
Yeah, Gloriana.
7.5 miles from Gloriana to Soap Creek. So you go from mile 24 to mile 31. So my advice is to not leave Gloriana Mine without having what you need for maybe what might be the hottest part of the day to the 50K mark, mile 31. Yeah,
definitely stock up on those fluids, re-ice, just knowing that you have, and I think that's it's the second, one of the longer sections in between aid stations.
It is
miles. So you're down to Soap Creek, and so there's 2 water crossings before you get to Black Canyon City, depending on the year and depending on whether there's water in or not. So
one of them's before Soap Creek aid station. That's Soap Creek.
Yep.
I've had it be completely dry, and I've had it be shin deep water. So expect to get your feet wet in that area, and think about your gear choices from that perspective, what you might want if you were to get completely submerged with water in your feet.
Yeah. And again, that's a great benchmark. Soap Creek is right around the 50K mark. So if you're thinking about pacing or thinking about kind of breaking the race down, for all intensive purposes in the 100K, you're halfway.
And for the 60K, you're looking at like 10K to go from
10K to go
from that 50K mark.
Yes. Yeah. So Soap Creek to Black Canyon City, a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of kind of terrain. You do go through another down into another wash with a usually there is water in that second crossing.
That's the Agua Fria, and there's almost always water in that one for the race. Some years the water's been so high that they've actually rerouted the race because of that, but most often you cross that race. Some of the most iconic photos are going to be from that area. I mean, that's where you see people kind of dunking their hat in the water. You're walking through it, maybe knee deep or just below the knee in certain sections, and really sandy coming in and out of those sections, right? Mm-hmm. And it's maybe like a quarter mile of like, you're coming into the sandy section, you're crossing the water, and getting out on the other side, it's sandy and loose.
Yeah.
Total distance, probably about a quarter mile.
There can be some mud, some slippery kind of sections, because you climb right afterwards. You kind of climb up, up out of Soap Creek. So, and then
out of the Agua
Fria. Sorry, yep. And then you do have a little bit of a climb there, but you're going to still be on the single track, and then you're going to be looking to get into Black Canyon City, and there is about a mile to a mile and a half of I think it's super fun.
Yep.
Cruisy downhill into Black Canyon City. So if you're running the 60K, I think know that you have a mile to a mile and a half of downhill at the end of your race. And if you've got anything left, like that's where you need to turn it on, because you don't have to climb anymore. You're almost done, and just go for it at that point. It's super fun.
Play a little rope-a-dope with your competitors, like run with them up that climb, and then turn it on,
and then just take off. Yeah, yeah. And so Black Canyon City is around mile 37, technically, or 37 and a half. It is on most years the end of the 60K race. There may be some shifts.
This year, I think it's a little different. I think there's some construction in the area that's causing them to reroute and maybe do a little bit of an out and back from Agua Fria. Traditionally, the Black Canyon City is the finish for the 60K race.
Yeah, and Black Canyon City is a city.
It absolutely is.
It's a city with...
What is the famous pastry? Is it like
pie?
Is it like a famous pie?
Well, there is a pie shop that has amazing, delicious homemade pie of every variety, and it always sells out. They also have food there. It's a very small town, very small.
Yes,
couple of buildings, but it's always a huge party. Again, it's another point where you're going to see your crew, and if you're in the 100K, it is the first place that you can pick up a pacer.
Okay,
so that is where you could consider having wardrobe options, could consider having new socks, new shoes. I believe you will likely get your shoes wet again after that, but if they're soaked from before and you just want some dry, fresh, you want
just
to
change socks.
Maybe just change socks, but have an option to switch your shoes.
Depending on where you are, this might be headlamp territory for some folks. So.
Yep. It can be a drop bag or a crude aid station, so you can have kind of anything you might need there. And then it is the full spread of, there's a lot of people at Black Canyon City every year. And if you're in the 100K, you are going to go to that aid station, and then you are going to turn around and go back up the climb you just came down.
Right on the same trail you just came in. But that does give you a little look at the people that are around you. So you may get a look at like maybe 15 minutes ahead of you and 15 minutes behind you, what's happening in the event. So that's something to consider.
You can see if people are staying in the aid station for a while, assess how things are going. Most years, there are definitely individuals who decide to end their race at Black Canyon City. It is kind of a critical juncture, and I'm gonna reference the great Scott Traer here, who was second in the race 2 years ago. And he said
Golden ticket.
He said his race did not even start till it didn't start until Black Canyon City. So that's just a piece of wisdom and advice that if you're able to, hold things back a little bit earlier on and let some people go, might serve you very well. You have a lot of miles and you have a decent amount of climbing from that point on. So to the extent that you can get in there feeling like, you got a lot more to give and that you haven't been completely wiped out, that's a great idea.
Black Canyon City for the 100K, you've got a lot of climbing left, but you've got no more net elevation down. It's going to be even from Black Canyon City all the way to the finish at Emery Trailhead. One thing that we didn't hit on, we talked about ice, but let's talk about what people might want to be thinking about from a gear perspective based on temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
Average temperatures in Arizona this time of year, it can get up to 80 degrees, which depending on where you're training may feel pretty warm.
Very. I mean, I think I remember I was re-listening to Claire, Gallagher talk about the year she ran the race, and she's like, I think it was around 80, and she's like, it was hot.
It's so hot.
It's so hot. I mean, in the desert, it is hot because it's so exposed. There is no cover. There is no, some years there might be a little cloud cover. Actually, one year I raced it, there was a bit of cloud cover, and it's amazing how much that does.
It makes a huge difference.
But if the sun is fully out, there's no shade. There's just no shade.
You're not hiding behind a saguaro cactus for very long.
Or definitely not a cholla. You do not want to hide behind a cholla. They will jump onto you. But yeah, so gear choices. A lot of people will wear light clothing, light colored clothing. It's the desert. It's dry. You can keep yourself wet. You can soak yourself and take advantage of that evaporative cooling. A lot of times, I put ice in my arm sleeves, and wear an ice bandana. There's a lot of great ones out there. You also do a couple other things. What do you do, Russ, for cooling?
So for cooling and for during the majority of the race, love the arm sleeves and ice in the arm sleeves. I'm wearing a pack almost for the entire time, so I'll put ice in the pack as well. I'm wearing a hat and I'm getting the hat wet. Mm-hmm. Ice in the hat for me doesn't do a ton, but anytime I can, just getting the hat completely wet and then putting the hat back on, you've got kind of that drip. Anything that you can do to stay wet and allow that evaporative cooling to happen, that is a real impact to your perceived effort.
Yep.
Something to kind of think about logistically, though, is it's an early day. You get on buses traditionally to get up there. Mm-hmm. You do want to stay warm for that entire time, and it is going to be cold when you get to Mayer. You can put all that in a bag. They can have it for you later. Stay as warm as you can all the way up until the beginning of the race. And then know that once you start running, you're going to warm up. Mm-hmm. I started with gloves still, but light gloves that I could just stash away just so that my hands didn't go numb, because when my hands go numb, then I can't eat. And, nutrition wise, you want to eat, you do drink.
You do. I don't think I've worn gloves. I wear sleeves, but I don't think I wear gloves. So depends on your tolerance in your hands for warmth and how much you want to carry them. But yeah, very important to consider all those things.
You're within the first hour, you're going to be down to what you should be running the rest of the race in mostly. Yeah. If you can stash it away, great. If you can dump it at the first aid station, at the first big aid station at Bumblebee, great. Mm-hmm. Carry as little as you can. And from some respects, people may want to be considering hey, do I want to just go handhelds and try to make it between aid stations? A lot of that is going to be dependent on how quickly you decide to go between some of these points. Yeah. For me, a pack was the right decision, but it's not the only way to go.
Yeah. Definitely see double handhelds and a waist belt out there with a lot of runners. And if you can carry all that and it's comfortable, sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. So where are we? So
we're at Black Canyon City. We want to talk a little bit more about kind of what they can expect that last marathon, right? That last 40K between Black Canyon City and the finish.
It is a marathon. Yep, that's right. Much. It's a marathon.
42K, 40K.
Yeah,
about that, right?
Yeah, it's just an easy marathon.
It's not though. It's got a lot of climbing.
It does.
And I think that the terrain is fundamentally different than kind of that first 60K.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more flowy for that first 60K. Yeah. I haven't been on that section, but you can talk about it a little bit.
I think, and in a way, we wanted to get this podcast out quickly. I will very much have a refreshed memory this weekend because I'm actually going to run the end of the course this weekend again. But yeah, from what I remember, it is like, it feels a little bit more like, I guess you could say, kind of mountainous. Like you're kind of climbing up short hills, mountains. There's rocks, like bigger rocks in the landscape. And you just, you also have 37 miles on your legs at this point. So climbs tend to
a little bit more.
They feel a little bit harder. And so I think it's just, it's just good to remember kind of, again, that kind of that steady piece, trying to jog when you can, knowing you're going to have some descents as well. But you definitely have to get into a little bit of a mindset of, okay, I've got some climbing coming. And some of these sections are, like to your point earlier, they're not like, a mile and 1,000-foot climb, but they're 200, 300, 400 foot miles. Which can, and a couple of them in a row. I mean, I think you climb 2,000 feet over one section, and it is spread out over 3 or 4 miles, but that's a decent climb. Oh, so, sure. So you've got these two kind of big ones, the one out of Black Canyon City. And I guess it does look on paper like, you've got a lot of downhill. I don't think it quite feels like there's a lot of descending, in that section. Okay. Exactly. So you're going to then come to Cottonwood Gulch is the next aid station. So we're talking around mile 46. That one, not a big one. Again, just kind of one where if you're out of fluids, you might want to top off. But you also do have another one in about 4 to 5 miles after that, and that's Table Mesa. Table Mesa is the aid station where some people will pick up a different pacer. So somebody that's going to take them the last 12 miles.
Yep.
Might have a drop bag there. You can have drop bag or crew. It's kind of like, okay, this is the last major one before I need to just like focus and get this thing done. So definitely take an assessment of if you need to do anything there at Table Mesa. Yep. Table Mesa, then you do have an aid station right before the end, Doe Spring, so 3 miles to go. And I think I was joking that like first year I ran this, I was being paced by a local, Colleen Lingley, and she's awesome. And we got almost to the finish, and she saw this like random piece of furniture on the side of the trail and was like, "There's the 1 mile to go, Mark." And I'm like, "Okay."
The couch at 1 mile to go.
It's pretty crazy, just sitting out there in the middle of the desert. But yeah, you do have an opportunity if you need anything with about 3.5 miles to go. Take advantage of it, or don't and blow right through it and just get it done. And you've got, again, some of those washes. I mean, there's definitely some down into rocky sections and then some sandy sections and then climb back out of it. You've got, again, it just feels like there is, more climbing. And I think some sections are runnable. We've seen, from live streams, this beautiful drone footage of people at the end of the race, and it kind of looks like they're running on this completely flat, and the front runners are moving so fast that it's hard to know. But
they're mid-6, low 6 minute pace.
They are. There. It's amazing. But there are some rocks underneath their feet, so they're just navigating over those quickly. And then, to finish, you come up out of a little bit of a low point up onto this open space, and then you're at the Emery Henderson trailhead. There's
the arches.
There's an arch. Yep. Well, there will be, yes, there's arches, but there's also like established picnic table arches and things that are welcoming you there. And then you will be done with the race.
And Emory Henderson Trailhead is the finish line. For those of people looking to kind of get an understanding of what the vibe is like there, you do have to be bused to that location. You cannot park at that location, but it's not too bad. You go from a parking area in the town, and you take a bus in there.
Yeah.
No problem. It's got like a really neat little vibe. They've got food in there. They've had a lot of folks hanging around because it's been it's a competitive event, and there's people doing interviews, and there's people just enjoying finishing the race and seeing greeting the runners coming in. So it's got a great finish line vibe.
Yeah, it does. There's like restrooms there and stuff like that. But if you are coming in to maybe pick up your runner or finish your crewing duties, or you're just like picking them up with the shuttle thing, you might, just remember maybe bringing them some warm clothes. Yeah. Warm clothes are always a good idea at the end of these races. So I'd recommend that. It could be getting dark or already be dark. So
it's mostly dark for people that are finishing.
It's mostly dark. It is. It's true. So that was kind of a walkthrough of the course. I think, again, typical temperatures and weather. There have been a couple of outlier years where they've had to reroute. They've done out and backs because it's been pouring rain and it's been a mud fest. But most of the time you're looking at probably to start, in between the mid 30s to mid 40s. And then for most of the daytime temperatures, I would say between 65 to 80.
Yep. I would agree with that. And like we're saying, the sun can make a big difference. It's mostly expect it to be sunny. If you catch a cloud covered day, you may be, enjoying some of that, the feels like cooler weather.
Yeah.
Slightly, even if the temperatures are still in the same range.
Yep. And if you're going to be out there kind of working on that, 15, 17 to 20 hour finish, maybe consider having another layer or a long sleeve or a light jacket or something in, in one of these later drop bags. Because again, it can get cool as the race goes on. So if you're into the night, you might want a little bit of extra clothing. So just to touch a little bit on aid stations, this race, this Aravaipa race is sponsored by GU. So the electrolyte that you're likely going to see at the aid stations is either going to be a GU Roctane or a GU hydration type product. Aravaipa always has Gatorade out there,
which I love. I'm a Gatorade guy.
Russ is a big. What's your favorite Gatorade flavor, Russ?
I mean, Glacier Freeze is
okay. I like
a good one. I've got some Stephen Kirsch Glacier Freeze going on.
Nice.
But I'll do orange as well. Yeah. I'll mix it between orange and blue.
Yeah.
Lemon lime. I'm not picky.
Just any Gatorade.
Any of the originals. The originals plus
the
Glacier
OGs,
Freeze.
The OGs.
Yeah. OGs plus
not
plus
any
Glacier.
Limon Pepino.
No, none of that one. Not the cucumber flavor. No, those are all garbage.
Oh no. Okay. Hot take. No, but so GU you'll have as an option, and then you'll also have GU gels, and you'll also have Gatorade. They also have usually salt tabs as caps available there, and then just all of your traditional, candies, cookies, potato chips. Let's just say it.
They're full service.
Patty Curry is the queen of all aid stations. Therefore, you're not going to be missing out on anything. They will have full spread of all kinds of chafing materials, including squirrel's nut butter, available. So you're going to be good. But if you're paying attention to specific hydration or electrolyte, think about if you want to do that GU Roctane, or if you want to bring your own, or Gatorade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And then I think that, otherwise we talked a little bit about, critical points, kind of just staying steady through that rocky section after Black Canyon City, after Bumblebee. Other critical points in the race, I don't know. Any that you want to mention, Russ, do you think?
I would say that the trail is very well marked. You stay on the Black Canyon Trail the entire time. So critical junctions are very well marked, and that's a spot where Aravaipa does a great job with their race preview and race information. They have a specific type of flag for when you're on the course. They have a specific type of flag to tell you, like, hey, you're off the course. So I have not heard of people routinely kind of missing at Black Canyon specifically. I think it's one of those that, there's really no excuse not to put the course on your watch or be able to have some sort of a backup. But in general, you can go out there and follow what's out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay. All right. So we are going to get into just a little bit of real world experience of being in the race, and might make this a little shorter than it will be in the future for time's sake. But I would love to know, Russ, tell me, how many times have you been at this race, and which distance did you race?
So I was at this race in 2022 and 2023. Both times we came with a group of runners from Castle Rock, and I ran the 60K both times. So in 2022, I think we had maybe like 12 or 13 people from Colorado all come. Awesome. Most of us ran the 60K race on that day. And it was, we mentioned before about folks taking some diggers and being bloodied up. I think all but maybe a handful had that fate. But for me personally, I was coming into that race a little bit injured and was really hoping to be able to still just enjoy the day out there. Luckily, I was able to do that. But, I think everyone always leaves a little bit of performance out there. They think like, if I've done this, I could have done this a little bit better. But I was proud of my time. I think I ran something in like 6:30 time frame for the 60K. But the next year I came back much better build up, and was able to knock off over a half an hour on the course time that I took. So it was real close to 6 hours that day. Had a great time and a great run the second part of the race. Did a lot less walking than the year before.
Well, and you learned, just being on the course. So that's like helpful for people to know, like, what'd you change in terms of pacing strategy?
So in terms of pacing strategy, I definitely had some times that I was, based on how I felt and how I performed the year before, I had some times that I didn't want to arrive at certain aid stations before. And the big one was Bumblebee Ranch, because you've got the climb and then all that downhill. I did not want to get to Bumblebee Ranch before a certain time. And so if I was a little bit ahead of schedule, it was like, okay, let's take a little, let's take stock of where I'm at. Let's take it easy for a half a mile. Let's make sure I eat something right now. Let's take care of myself. Let's take the focus off of being on the edge of like, I'm racing at this stage.
Yeah.
And so I think I came into Bumblebee maybe 10 or 15 minutes slower than the year before.
Yeah.
And made up almost 45 minutes on that last half of the race from mile 19 to mile 37.
Yeah.
And you have way more fun running and coming up to people than you do walking and having people just float right by you. So there's that piece of motivation as well. And, you just enjoy it. I enjoyed it, and my performance was that much better. I mean, the times prove it out. But I think that pacing strategy worked really, really well for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, way to go with learning from the first time around and adjusting and then like sticking to the plan, and it paid off big. So are you going to come back and run the 100K ever?
I think the 100K will be on the list. I am now on the track of trying to find Western States qualifiers and eventually save up enough of that to be able to do that race. So I think Black Canyon 100K will be on that list at some point in time again. I'll have to come back and do the 100K. I've gotten out what I want out of the 60K. I would run it again because it's super fun. But I think the next time I do Black Canyon, the 100K is going to be on the list.
Nice. Is there anything from your racing experience that, I don't know, you feel like just was a big surprise about the course, or like something that you didn't expect?
So what I would say to that is that in the training leading up to this race, I knew like, oh, I don't have my trail legs. I'm in Colorado. I'm training on a lot of dirt roads because that's what's available for me to get turnover on, which I think is the number one important piece from training. But I didn't have kind of that lateral movement and those trail legs that I would have from the summertime from just being out on trails more often. So I think that in the future, when I train for this race, I'm going to put a focus back on either on shorter runs or on some of the longer runs, even if they are slower in general, doing some of that type of training on trails. I still think the number one most important piece is getting turnover. This is a race. You want to be able to run most of it. It's terrain that's flat enough to be able to run if you have the legs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that getting the turnover is more important than that trail focus. I think if you just did trails, you would be disappointed with how you would perform out there. But at least in Colorado, where it's snowy and we've had minus 20 degrees feels like in the past couple of weekends. But that's one thing that I think that is really critical leading into the event.
That's great advice. All right.
So Corinne,
Yes.
you have been to this race a number of times. Why don't you break down for us what years you went and what distances you went, and then we can go into some other questions.
Okay. So I've run the race 4 times. This will be my 5th year going back. I just can't get enough of Black Canyon Ultras. I love this race. I started in 2020, COVID year, before COVID emerged onto the universe and took everything.
Yes, this would have been February
this was
2020.
The month before, February 2020. This was my first 100K. So this was, of course, because I raced for Aravaipa, it was on my radar before, but it looked like an awesome race to do for my first 100K, my first attempt at the distance. So I went into it, a little nervous about that. And then I ran the 60K the following year.
2021
60K. Awesome race.
Awesome group of women running that race.
Amazing group of women. Like this race over time, it's going to become, kind of like how today, UTMB is still the big race, but CCC is just as competitive over time. This is going to happen to this race because every year the 60K, there's like amazing people in it and it's super competitive. I mean, Mimi Kokko was in it last year. We had like Rachel Drake, win the year that I raced it, and Leah Yingling running it. So iconic people. So 60K in 2021, 2022, I went back for the 100K. I ended up DNFing at around mile 29. Had some kind of stomach thing going on, stomach bug of some sort that was just not fun. And I decided, and that was my first DNF. I actually wrote an article about it called Decision Not Failure. That's my reframing of DNF.
Great acronym.
and then the next year I went back and did the 60K again. This is last year. I did the 60K again. I really wanted to try to beat my time. And I think I could have, but I did encounter a little bit of a kind of knee injury. Second half of it, my knee was hurting pretty bad the whole race. So I did, finish still. I think I ran a little slower than I did in 2021, but ended up still like, I think a 5th or 6th place finish, which was, I was glad to finish it. And so this year we're just every other year.
100K.
Yep.
60K, 100K, 60K, and 100K this coming up year.
Yes.
So tell me, what are some of your key training points with so much experience on the course? What are the key things that you're looking at going into this race coming up? You're coming off of a fantastic performance in December at the McDowell Mountain Ranch 50 mile. So 50 miler in December, early December, right? So a little bit of recovery from that. And now you're looking at a build into Black Canyon. So what are your most critical things that you're looking at?
Well, I think I've done a couple of things I've more or differently this year building in. Last year I had trained and run a road marathon in December. And I don't know if that was the beginning of maybe kind of, maybe I just shouldn't run on the road. Maybe there's a reason the road is hard on your body.
Great marathon.
I did the Tucson Marathon. Everyone should do it.
But you're happy to be done.
Well, Boston one day, but not this year. So anyways, so that was different. I did do a speed focus before that, into the 60K, which I think is helpful. But I think this year, I have done a couple things, more heat training.
Yes.
So there's importance to both your heat adaptation, and then most importantly on the day is the heat management piece. So we talked about the heat management, but I have been doing, I did, kind of a sauna protocol of like 5 days straight. And then I've been doing every 2 to 3 days since then to maintain any of those heat adaptations. And then, I'll stop that like 4 to 5 days before the race, because it does kind of make you a little tired, or can, and I need, definitely don't want to be tired. So some more heat prep was one thing. And then I think a little bit more climbing. This is, again, I'm doing the 100K this year. You need to be resilient and need to kind of work on whatever can lead to, building up that fatigue resistance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I did do, some weeks that were pretty dedicated to a hefty amount of vert, also kind of compacted on the weekend long runs, back to back, 3,500 and then 3,000 feet of climbing, on a couple of days. And I think that week with some treadmill hiking, I got around 12 or 13,000 feet for the week. So for me, that's
so
good.
Is there anything on the day that you're going into thinking about that you're going to look at differently, whether it's pacing or whether it's gear wise? Well, let's just, what are you going to be doing gear wise? Are you going to wear the S Labs again?
I'm going to wear the S Lab,
okay.
Ultra 3s. I might bring the Genesis, Solomon Genesis, as a potential
for later
to change into. They're a little lighter, maybe a little faster. Might put those on at Black Canyon City. We'll see. Then I'm not giving away any of the rest of my secrets. No, I'm just kidding. Completely kidding.
That's all good.
I am going to try to pace the race smart. I am going to try to channel my inner Scott Trayer and let people go and not worry about it. But for me, in these big races and the races that are super competitive, like, it's really helpful for me to focus on times.
Yeah, for sure. Knowing what you can do.
Historically, these times have ended up being, top 5. Therefore, if I try to run that time, I don't need to worry about where anybody else is. And if I'm on pace to run that time and I surprise myself and I have more at the end and I can run faster than that time, that's amazing. And I will, take it all day. But I think it helps me get a little bit out of worrying about where I am place-wise. If I'm like, this is my goal of a time that I want to run. If I run that time, I'm going to be pretty happy with it. And if it's the time that is, XYZ, hopefully that's likely gonna place me decent. But then this race, there are 50 women that have a 90% or more on ultra sign up. And so, I'm not particularly trying, nor do I believe that I could get a golden ticket unless I have like the day of my life. Therefore, I want to just improve on my time from, when I race this last, and see what I can do after, 4 more years of racing and a number of other 100Ks under my belt.
And I think what that's going to do is it's going to put yourself in a position to compete over the last third, right?
Yeah.
You're going to put yourself in a position to compete. And then let those motivations happen in the last 20 miles.
Exactly.
Right?
Use that energy there. Yeah. And I've been in races where I've been dying, literally dying. You've been with me on the side of mountains, dying for the last third of the race. And I've been in some where I can run the end of the race. And it's just like, it's just very fulfilling to run a race where you feel like you're ending it strong.
Yeah. You finish with run left in you.
Yeah.
You know that you put a good performance out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay. To a little bit lighter, is there any like volunteer story or anything that you had over your past 4 years that you can say? I mean, the volunteers there at Aravaipa are great. They're prepared. They know about like what you need. That part is awesome. But anything that you can think of.
So I have 2 things that I'll mention because this is great. The year that we all went down there, Castle Rock Run Club, and we we stayed all together, and all of the significant others were cooking meals for people. And it was just amazing. It was so fun. Like, highly recommend going to do this with a group of people that are your friends, and it will just be memories for a lifetime. But so the year that I DNF'd, I volunteered at the 60K the next day
at Bumblebee.
and at Bumblebee. So the Bumblebee aid station. So I got all the inner workings of the Bumblebee aid station, and the volunteers there were just, I mean, incredible. Like, they were so dialed. And then it is such a fulfilling thing to volunteer at an aid station and to see, and people are so appreciative. It's like, it's just very rewarding, and everyone should do it if they haven't. But I remember from that race from that day that I believe it was both Paul Nelson and Howie Stern were there. Paul was racing and Howie was taking pictures at Bumblebee. And so you have these two
like
icons in the world of race photography, Trail Junkie and Howie Stern. And Paul was having a hard time, and he was sitting in the chair, and Howie just came over with his camera, starts taking millions and millions of pictures and Paul's over there flipping Howie off, and
get out of my
you've got to be kidding me right now. But it was amazing. It was hilarious, and it was just like the best.
That was the motivation that Paul needed. He was like, I don't want pictures of me right now. I need to get the heck out of this aid station. Get out of this chair.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, speaking of the Agua Fria crossing, I also have a picture of myself literally about to like fall over on one leg that Howie took on one of the big rocks. Like, I'm trying to avoid the water, and if there's no avoiding it. Yeah, exactly. So I have, I mean, honestly, some of my favorite race photos are from Black Canyon, and they're from Howie Stern. I mean, so just go there for the race photos, if nothing else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Anything else, any other takeaway that you want to give the listeners today about Black Canyon, or about any other things that we've talked about today? I think we've covered quite a bit.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. I think one thing that maybe I remember is, before I ever raced in Arizona, I thought Arizona is just it's just the desert, and there's nothing there, and there's it's not pretty. And then I went there, and I was amazed by how much diverse landscape there is, how many actual, like, I mean, they might not be 14ers, but there are some mountains there.
Absolutely.
And so I think that it's really beautiful in its own way. And the Black Canyon course is a really neat way to see a lot of different parts of it, and kind of just get that snapshot of like what Arizona single track has to offer. And it's really cool when you're running by these giant saguaros, and you're in and out of little rivers and things that, I don't know, I just feel like it showcases the landscape really well.
Yeah, and February is a beautiful time of year to be in that area.
Yeah.
The Black Canyon Trail in the middle of August, in the middle of the day, is a lot different than the middle of February. And it's amazingly beautiful. One of the things that, like, you think about is like, you may not have a lot of cover, but that means that you've got open views across these vistas of mountains and trails. And it really is beautiful to be able to see it all as you're going. There's not a bad view on the course, honestly.
Yeah, no, there's not. And it was so awesome that we made shirts, which you're wearing.
We've got the Black Canyon, the Muertes versus Black Canyon.
Muertes versus Black Canyon. For anyone who knows the Coconino Cowboys and is a diehard, they know their shirt that was Cowboys versus everyone. So this is our version, because we're the Meadows Muertes, Muertes versus Black Canyon. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. But awesome. Well, we hope you enjoyed hearing about the Black Canyon Ultras, specifically about the Black Canyon 100K. Hope you'll consider running it at some point in time. It's a fantastic race. So well run. Such a cool vibe and atmosphere. And if you want to go see everything that ultra running has to offer, and from a community standpoint, it is a great place to do that, and get yourself some Freak Brothers pizza and say hi to Patty Curry at the aid stations, and who knows, Jamil might be running with you. I think he has not run this race. I think this is Javelina used to be one of the only ones he hadn't, and he ran Javelina last year, but I don't think he's ever run Black Canyon. So one of these years, you might just run by Jamil.
Yep, absolutely. Well, stay tuned. We'll be here for more episodes of Ultra Uncovered.
Bye.